It was a special evening. Almost all presidential candidates came to the studio of TV Republica, sometimes known as the home of free speech. Almost 3 hours of substantive conversation about Poland. Regardless of the views, each candidate had an equal chance. The presidential debate is an integral part of an election campaign. Since TV Republica is the largest news station in Poland, it was our duty to organise such a political clash. A few hours before the start of the debate, supporters of each candidate began to gather in front of our TV headquarters. Emotions grew outside, but also inside, where more candidates appeared. Our state-of-the-art studio, financed with your help, was ready, and we began a little after 8 p.m. in full swing, well, almost. For this debate, we also invited Ms. Magdalena Bayat, who represents the left, Mr. Rafał Trzaskowski, who is a candidate of the Civic Platform. We renewed these invitations, but the candidates did not express a desire to participate in our debate.
Ale kandydaci nie wyrazili chęci udziału w naszej debacie.
The debate consisted of several rounds. Initially, the candidates answered questions from the presenter. Are you in favour of Poland starting to prepare for the introduction of the euro? Then they faced questions from viewers who had previously won an online poll. How many genders are there? What changes in the electoral law and the referendum law would be beneficial for greater citizen participation in public life? But the most emotional part of the debate was the questions posed by the candidates to other candidates. You will not be able to distance yourself from it if you are signing this coalition agreement. You are Tusk's coalition partner, and please do not hide this from the Polish people any longer. I was just thinking that you will probably try to cover up your ineptitude and recitation of formulas with some gadgets, so I have such a special bag here for gadgets from the counter candidates. If any of you would still like, I am, of course, open. There was a clash between Karol Nawrocki and Szymon Hołownia. The Citizens' presidential candidate asked the Marshal of the Sejm about unflattering words said about him on the air of the illegally seized public media. And that TV station called you, Mr. Marshal, a political plankton and a third-rate candidate. I simply ask, how does Mr. Marshal feel about that? You know, I have already heard everything about myself, and from the mouths of your supporters and from the mouths of the Strong Together. But about government television, I ask. I understand. The whole thing was topped off with statements from all the candidates. We must reject Donald Tusk's government and not allow Rafał Trzaskowski's clumsy tussle to the presidential palace to give him any chance of victory. Remember that on the 18th of May, we all go to the polls as one. In the first round, we vote with our hearts. In the second round, with our minds. And there is no good enough excuse that your head hurts or your finger hurts. We go to vote, because we go to vote whether Poland will be or will not be. And at the very end, there was a shaking of hands, everyone with everyone across the divide, an expression of respect and a symbol of peace. The participants in the debate represented the entire range of political views. Each candidate had an equal opportunity to reach out to potential voters. The rules were clear and transparent. No one invited the candidates less than 2 hours before the event, unlike Rafał Trzaskowski's staff. Please see what happened at the end. They all shook hands with each other, and despite the fact that, after all, they are fighting each other for the position of president, for positions in the political market, but also for certain ideas which are often mutually exclusive, they were able to walk out of here in harmony. Why? Because it was a debate on rationale. It wasn't about emotions. It wasn't about who takes down whom. What is most important to us is the opinion of you, our viewers. That is why we are so happy that our debate was so eagerly watched and that you have such a good opinion about it. How did you like it? Very much. Admittedly, well, there was the lack of Mr. Trzaskowski and Ms. Bayat, of course, but that's hard. They're to blame themselves. I liked it. It was calm and cultured. It was conducted wonderfully by Kasia Gojska, and that's what it's all about, that everything should be so calm and cultured. I watched it. And how did you like it? Very good. A+. Of course I watched it. And how did you like it? Very much, because Kasia leads very well. I'm a fan of TV Republica in general. The debate was on such terms as one would hope for on the main TV stations, that is, surprisingly well. But of course one could expect much more. In fact, it is worth recognizing here that each candidate had time and a chance to speak about their programs, their ideas. In an era of rampant hatred and war of Polish people on Polish people, a normal civilized debate, without questions arranged for one candidate, is a breath of hope. The winner was freedom of speech, freedom of debate. Who did the best? In my opinion, those who came here, because it was already evident from the previous debate in Końskie that absence takes away support. The next presidential debate organised by TV Republika will be on the 9th of May. The organisers promise that it will be different from all previous ones, but the time will come for the details.
The Russian army keeps attacking civilians, adults and children alike. Donald Trump wants to stop this bloodshed on the European continent as soon as possible. The US president has admitted that he has given Putin another deadline for a truce, which for now remains a secret.
But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start, and Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame. All I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Donald Trump's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, Steve Witkoff, who met with Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg, revealed that peace talks are already at an advanced stage and that the first preparations for a truce are underway.
Things happening between the two countries, and I think we might be on the verge of something that would be very, very important for the world at large. On top of that, I believe...
The Russians have continued to commit war crimes in Kryvyi Rih, Kherson, Kramatorsk, Sumy, and these are just examples from the last few days.
Цієї п'ятниці був рівно місяць.
Friday marked 1 month since Russia rejected the US proposal for a full, unconditional ceasefire. And instead of a truce, they are dropping bombs on our people and attacking us with drones. The only hope for Ukrainians to stop Russian aggression is Donald Trump. The US president is constantly calling on Putin to sit at the negotiating table. There are two distinct factions in the White House advising Trump on how to deal with the Kremlin. Steve Witkoff says it's necessary to negotiate calmly with Russia. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says it's necessary to use the language of force because that's the only language Vladimir Putin understands. Let's remember that the Americans are taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The whole deal of suspension of aid to Ukraine was only temporary. Sanctions on Russia are still in effect, so it all depends on who in the White House is closer to President Trump, who has more influence on him. More than half of Americans, 52% to be exact, think Donald Trump is handling key challenges better than his predecessor Joe Biden. Not only do Americans support the president's efforts for peace in Ukraine, but they are especially pleased by deportations of illegal and dangerous immigrants who have been terrorizing American cities and towns for years. Many of them, under a special agreement, are being sent to heavily guarded prisons in El Salvador.
We're very happy, and we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with.
Americans also support cuts to government spending, which skyrocketed under the Democrats' rule. Donald Trump came in after those 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency almost as a savior, and that's how people perceive it. To date, Trump is seen by the public as the president they voted for. He is exactly what they wanted.
67%, that's tariff.
The American people are still waiting to assess the effects of his tariff policies and are hoping that the labor market situation will begin to improve. These are the most important hopes for the first 100 days of Donald Trump's presidency, which will come to an end later this month.
The European Commission is sounding the alarm. Extraordinary security measures are to be implemented in areas of Poland where cases of bird flu have been detected. However, the poultry industry claims that the Commission's actions are disproportionate to the actual situation. The solutions proposed by Brussels could cause losses measured in the billions, not just in the poultry industry, but in the entire economy. All this could be groundwork for the EU signing a deal with Mercosur, flooding the European market with cheap, low-quality poultry and other produce. Over the past 2 months, 73 outbreaks of bird flu have been confirmed in Poland. This disease occurs at similar rates in other EU countries. Despite that, the European Commission is only taking action in Poland. It is blatantly obvious that the EU is taking advantage of this whole bird flu situation to target one of Europe's biggest poultry industries. Brussels wants to cover areas in the Kujawsko-Pomorskie, Łódzkie, Mazowieckie, Warmińsko-Mazurskie and Wielkopolskie provinces with emergency security measures. However, a final decision on the matter is expected next week. These extraordinary measures, the kind that the European Commission has never done anywhere in Europe to this extent before, that is, shutting down poultry production altogether for an unknown period of time because of avian influenza, will be the destruction of a huge industry. These restrictions will not only hit the poultry industry, but also packaging plants, cold storage and transport companies. And in the end, it is the consumer who will bear the brunt. Grain producers will also have problems. 25% of our grain production goes to feed poultry, so we will have excess production. Polish farmers object to being singled out by the European Commission because bird flu has been present in every country for a long time. For almost 10 years now, basically all countries that have a large poultry industry have been living and functioning under this epidemiological rigor and this epidemiological risk. This virus accompanies us and is transmitted by wild birds, but it also affects poultry farms in Poland, as in every country. So, why such a focus on Poland by the European Commission? This is all solely to prepare for the signing of a trade deal with Mercosur in South America. According to this deal, poultry will flow from Mercosur member countries in South America into Europe and is to come and replace Polish poultry. In Hungary, despite a similar epidemiological situation, the European Commission is not proposing such restrictions. In France, there were more than 1,000 outbreaks of bird flu in 2022, and no restrictions were introduced, but poultry were allowed to be vaccinated. It seems to be planned to go in a particular direction. It's certainly not proportional, and it's certainly not fair. The current Polish government's passivity towards the European Commission is worrying. Many worry that this could be caused by vested interests.
Polish President Andrzej Duda in Zagreb discussed bilateral issues, such as the millions of Polish tourists who visit Croatia every year, on matters pertaining to the Three Seas Initiative. A summit will be held in Warsaw in 2 weeks. Security issues such as the North Atlantic Pact and defense cooperation between Poland and Croatia were also discussed. Regarding the North Atlantic Pact, President Andrzej Duda recalled his proposal to increase spending to 3% of GDP on defense. The proposal was made a year ago, but today was formalized, and President Andrzej Duda informed about the letter he sent to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte. I have sent an official letter to NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, proposing that NATO countries make a joint decision to raise the defense spending threshold to a minimum of 3%. The president reminded and thanked the Croats that Croatian troops have been stationed in Poland since 2016. The soldiers are defending NATO's eastern flank, and we are very grateful for this. The Three Seas Summit will be held in 2 weeks. President Duda revealed that the guest speaker will be the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright. He is a very important figure in the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump. We have confirmation that a close associate of President Donald Trump, the U.S. Secretary of Energy, Mr. Chris Wright, will be present at the Three Seas Summit. His presence at the summit in Warsaw has already been confirmed by the White House. Chris Wright is responsible for implementing the U.S. version of the energy transition, which in this case means increasing oil, gas, and coal production, and putting the U.S. economy on cheap raw materials and universal access to cheap energy. This will increase production, it will increase employment in small towns, and it will reduce inflation significantly. So these things are also very global.
Z Zagrzebia Aleksander Wierzejski, Republika.